This week on Snark Squad Pod, we are interviewing blogger and reviewer Jessica Moro. Welcome back to Snark Squad Pod. I'm Nicole Sweeney.
My name is Miss, and this week we are joined by Jessica. Say hello.
Hi, I'm Jess. You can find me at Twitter at Jess with an S. You can find me on Facebook under Book Crack. And I just started over at a new corner at Frolic Media, and I will be introducing new adult reads each month.
So I invited Jess here to do something a little different than what we've done on the podcast before. So a big part of why we enjoy doing this, and I think the appeal of the podcast, is getting to talk to our friends about media things. So we thought, what if we invited one friend and just talked specifically to them about all of their media preferences or tastes or whatnot. So basically, we're here to interview Jess, but she wants to think of this as more of a conversation.
This is definitely a conversation. As my first time on a podcast, I don't know about this interviewing thing, but I'm ready for this great conversation.
So this is where we would normally do a synopsis of the media thing we would cover for the episode, but I'm going to give you a little synopsis of Jess and I and how we met and our friendship. So
a friendship synopsis?
Yes, this is our friendship.
I'm ready for your side of things.
It's not a point of contention. We literally met in a book club.
We did.
So we met in a book club. It's local to our area, obviously. And it was basically, it started off as like young adult readers, like adults who still enjoy young adult. And honestly, like, bless that book club. It's now 1% books. And like,
it went off the rails. Just off the rails.
99% not talking about books and drinking. But after every book club,
to be clear, there's nothing wrong with not talking about books and drinking.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Highly recommend.
What was happening, we would go to these book clubs and we would like stand in the parking lot after the book club and talk for like an hour or two more. So then we just figured out, okay, we can hang out outside.
Literally in dark parking lots. There was random cats coming up to us, like neighbors just walking by. We're like, we need an area.
Yeah, so we started hanging out.
Beautiful friendship.
We hung out, started hanging out outside of the book club. But books, I think, were, the thing that really cemented the friendship and started the friendship. And obviously, she was at BookNet Fest for these past 2 years, and she watched Sabrina with me on my couch because I needed moral support. So
moral support, that's what I give.
Puns.
There we go.
So yeah, that is, and honestly, we have not differing, kind of differing tastes. Like a lot of the things,
very different tastes. I feel like we argue a lot about books. We just argued today at breakfast.
That's true.
I'm also really excited to have Jess here because Jess and I have bonded over Twitter for our shared love of trashy reality TV. I feel like Jess has so much to teach me. She knows way more about trashy reality TV than I do, but I'm excited. I'm excited to bring that into the podcast.
We've talked about having Jess as a guest on the podcast, but every time I ask her, she's like, "Oh, are we going to cover reality TV?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, can you pick something else?
There's nothing wrong with reality TV. It's what got me through grad school. I think that's how my descent into this like Bravo, MTV, just pure reality TV happened. I couldn't read because I was reading all these books for grad school. But then my sister was watching, I think it was The Challenge or something. She was watching one of those shows, or it could have been Housewives. And I had seen them, but the way I watch them now was not how I watched them prior to grad school. And then it just became this fire inside of me. I'm like, this dumpster fire I'm putting myself through in grad school with all these papers is nothing compared to Teresa flipping a table after a prostitution whore came into her life and twisted it around. So it got me through it.
Okay, so tell us a little more about like reality TV in terms of like, what are your favorites? What are you watching now? Give people a taste of when you say reality TV, what are you talking about?
So with reality TV, there's different levels. And I've said this to you many times. I don't think I've found my line of where this is too much. So, and I'm still venturing to see what my line is, but so far nothing. There's like just the feel good stuff. Sometimes I'm at work, I will put the sound on and I will just literally in the background have the British Bake Off. And it just makes you feel so much better than having to process a stack of work when this British person is talking about the right temperature to get their bread or their muffin or their cupcake. And then we venture into my latest love, which I just watched last night. It's called Love After Lockup. And the premise is that these people, men and women, are tired of conventional dating apps or websites, and they go on to dataconvict.com or find a pen pal in jail websites, and they end up having romantic relationships. So they document it on the website. The 1 week is right before the person in jail is coming out, and then they document the transition from coming out of prison or jail and going into like regular civilian life, I guess I would say. And it's actually been extremely interesting.
The premise definitely sounds super fascinating, but my favorite part of that synopsis was how casually you said dataconvict.com, like this is something everyone knows about, as if you weren't just sharing new information with us. But
oh yes, see, that's the other thing I learned about reality TV. You learn so much. So I've actually heard about dataconvict.com because prior to the show, because there was a movie filmed in Miami. It's called No Pain. I think No Pain, No Gain. It was with The Rock and Mark Wahlberg, and it was about a murder that actually happened in the town that I was raised in. And it's a very like small town. You would not think like this mass murder happened. So one of our local papers, Miami New Times, had a whole like just information on the 3 people who murdered the person, and one of them was on dataconvict.com. And I was like, holy shit, this is like a thing. So obviously I went on it because I was curious, and I do full research. And it was mind-blowing, and I was like, everyone has a person. Yeah. Okay?
Jess is 100% my friend who will casually in conversation drop something like, yeah, I applied to be on The Bachelor.
Oh, yes. I actually did apply, not to be on The Bachelor, but to be on Married at First Sight.
Married at First Sight, yeah. So she'll just like casually be like, yeah, what?
You didn't? This is just what happened. But yeah, so those are just... Love After Lockup is a very recent favorite of mine that I highly suggest just for the anthropology side of it, because I just remember one couple, my favorite. She was apparently she kept mentioning the only Black Mormon in Utah, and she met a person who had been in prison for 18 years. He lived in California. So when he finally comes out, he's literally been in jail for all of the iPhone releases. All the TVs used to be square boxes. And I just remember when he finally got to the hotel, he checked behind the TV to see what was behind it because he couldn't believe it was flat. And I was like, you've been in jail for so long. You didn't even know there's flat TVs now. So it was beautiful.
My thing with reality TV is not like a judgment call or like a quality thing at all. I just don't get the same, like watching people do dumb things doesn't de-stress me. It heightens my anxiety and my stress. Like I understand that I'm going through grad school or whatever, but watching that kind of stuff just makes me more like upset. Like I can't do it.
Well, so the only one now that maybe I get a little bit upset about and I don't understand is Lindsay Lohan's beach house thing. So yeah, I'm watching that one, and it is a roller coaster. Like I go through this like roller coaster of emotions. It's like week 2 when we've already gone through gender role things that have been like very weird, and then this fight with another guy who called her a 2, but in my opinion she's a 10. So I was getting really upset about him just calling her out. I'm like, you better go in there, you better do something, Susie.
So you get into it.
I get into it only when it's something like that I just cannot fathom. When it's like, usually it's when a guy thinks he's so like on top of the world, he's a big man on campus, and you're not. I'm looking at you and you're not, Brent.
Nicole, for you, when you're watching reality TV, like, where is it also coming from a place of like de-stressing, or?
I don't know. I feel like I watched the most reality TV when I was in undergrad, and my first apartment that I had by myself, I don't know, like the silence spooked me. And so I started I would have E on in the background, thinking like, okay, this is just nonsense background noise and like it won't be distracting. And then by the end of the year, I was like, I know all about this tanning salon and like all of the Kardashians, like all like I don't know. My plan failed me miserably. So that was definitely a time that I was consuming the most, and it was I think it was de-stressing, yeah, because it was like turning my brain off, from similar to what Jess is describing. At this point, pretty much the only thing that I watch is MTV's The Challenge,
which we talk a lot about on
which
Twitter.
We talk about a ton. And for me, I don't like, I've been watching some of these people since I was, I don't know, 11 or 12. Like there are people on this most recent season who I'm like, yeah, I remember talking to my friends about your road rule season when I was in the 6th grade. Like I've been following your nonsense drama since I was a literal child. And I don't know, I'm in too deep now. And then they keep adding new people slowly and like forcing me to care about them.
The new people they add, because who are they? Where did they come from? What did they do to add themselves to the mix? Were they on Real World? No, they were on some weird UK show.
Yeah, it is really distressing. Yeah. The most recent seasons, like,
I was stressed out about that. I was like, who are these people? So obviously I had to go online, look up these people, see how they fit in, and then I'll randomly like message Nicole, did you know that they did this and this?
You guys are doing the get off my lawn thing for reality TV right now.
That's correct.
I just want you to know.
No, I mean,
get out of here.
I'm on board with a lot of the new people, because some of the new people that they've added in recent seasons are just profoundly self-aware, and like that is delightful as a consequence of being, I don't know, like they're in their early 20s. So I'm 30 and I can say I've been watching these people doing this shit since I was 10 or 11. But if you're, 21, 22, like this, you like never lived in a world without this. And so if you are moderately intelligent coming into this space with that background knowledge, I find that fascinating. Like just that whole dynamic of people who are like, yeah, I grew up very much around all of this, and I just like watching them. They're ridiculous, and I care too much about I can't explain it. I can't make it make sense. Yeah. I don't know what it is that I'm getting out of it. I do get way too invested. I do get like really stressed out when they're having really like stupid arguments, and it's very clear to me that one person is wrong, but then like they're both wrong because they're both bad at arguing, and like that's really stressful and frustrating to me. But I also have I have a private Twitter list that is just people from the challenge. I don't want to actually follow them, like have them, fucking up my Twitter feed. But after I watch an episode, I'll go on Twitter because it's like bonus content. It's like they're all on Twitter continuing to fight about stupid shit. And I recognize that this is also a behavior that is stressing me out needlessly. But these are the choices that I'm making with my free time.
Wait, what's a private Twitter list? Now I want one. Because the thing, what I do is, because that's kind of what's weird about reality TV now. Like before, when I was younger and I would watch Real World Rotos, that was it. This is what you had. You had the hour. But now everyone's going on and there's Twitter fights and then there's behind the scenes.
And they reference it on the show. They're like, oh yeah, they like, we know that these two people are enemies. Like they because they pair people up. They're like, oh, these people have a chemistry together. They don't like each other. And so it's going to be really hard for them to work together. And that's kind of the whole premise. But now frequently these pairings of these two people hate each other. The reason that we know that these two people hate each other is because they've been bitching at each other on Twitter for months. Like it's not because of anything that has ever happened on the show. It's that they became Twitter enemies.
And then they talk about it on the show, and I'm like, do I have to go back and do a deep dive? Like, what did I miss?
But Jess, a private Twitter list, it just means that nobody, like if you go to my profile, you don't see, like when you click on lists, you don't see that I have a list dedicated to the challenge.
I'm gonna have to do multiple of those.
I mean, I'm also like on my own podcast outing myself for this.
Right.
So I'm not sure what I'm keeping, like, keeping it private.
You can't see it.
But, it's fine.
But you know what TLC does, and so I'm the only... A lot of my friends watch our other fan favorite, because now I've tuned my dad into it, so my dad watches it too. 90 Day Fiance. TLC throws the greatest shade on Twitter about the people on the show. So while you're watching the show, you have to actively go on their Twitter feed and look like what they're putting on there, and they'll retweet tweets. So it's just like this interactive thing that you can kind of do, I guess, with them. And you can figure out if Asuelo really did learn how to ride a bike, because they don't have time to show it on TV. So now they're doing it on Twitter.
There's a part of me that wants to like try to justify this from this is like a really interesting transmedia component to this. But like, this is just like, it's interesting to hear gossip that has no actual consequences for you.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's that kind of thing. Like gossip that is in any way like pertains to me is stressful. and like, then there's like secrets I gotta keep, and I gotta like keep track of how people feel about each other. Like I don't want that. I don't want it. I'm not interested. But like other people's gossip, delightful, great. I would tell me all of it. Tell me all of your drama.
And by including
so
like
that.
by including the social media aspect of it, and like, one of a few reality TV shows that I will actually still watch is The Bachelor every now and then, but I have to do it like every 2 seasons. Like I need breaks in between or whatever, but I will go and I'll live tweet it, because introducing that is very much more of that gossipy, because not only am I now part of the gossip that doesn't include me, but I can talk to other people about the gossip, and we're all like experiencing this together. And I think, and I was going to say experiencing this trash, which I don't want to like belittle it, because obviously it's entertaining, right?
Yeah,
like it's doing something right. And even if it's not, highbrow, whatever you want to say about it, it's obviously capturing attention and entertaining people. And we're all here talking about it together. And that is 100% the only way that I will watch reality TV, is with other people or talking to other people about it.
On Twitter.
Well, not in real life.
There is a new season of The Challenge starting soon.
I know, that trailer seems pretty intense. So many British people, and guess what? Just like I did, they went more international. So it's not just British people. They're bringing in like New Zealanders, Australia, Japan.
Will you please explain to the people why you say that you went international?
Right. There's some dropped context. Before we started recording, Jess was teasing this conversation by telling us that her and her love of reality TV went international last year. So
I did.
That's going to require some explanation.
So when it was my last semester of grad school, and to reward myself, I had bought a trip to London the year before. So to gear up for it, I didn't have time to read, because usually I try to read like a book set in that city or country so I could just get in the mindset, I guess. And it's entertaining. So what I did is I went international on reality TV, and I went on Hulu, and I was like, what British reality show is out there that's really good? And so I found Made in Chelsea, and I watched all, I think, 13 seasons.
Oh my God.
Wow.
13 seasons.
13. And it's like this group of posh kids they're not kids. They're literally like late 20s, running around London, just spending ludicrous amounts of money. And what's interesting to me, and I thought was so awesome, is, and it's even harder for me to accept because I live in Florida. To get out of Florida, it's an 8-hour drive or at least a 3-hour plane ride. They just jet to freaking Spain in an hour. They're in France. They're in Germany. They're just going everywhere. So I was super into that show. And then I tried to go Essex something. Then I also watched The Bachelor Winter Games. I was telling Maddie about it. And they brought in the Bachelor contestants from around the world into a snow place in Vermont, and they would compete for dates. And so there was one guy from New Zealand, there was a girl from Japan, which I was really, really intrigued about because they don't even kiss in The Bachelor Japan because it's like not culturally accepted. And now we have The Bachelor where all they talk about is like him losing his virginity. So I was like, how are these Americans gonna match? They didn't.
Spoiler alert.
They didn't. She couldn't even speak the language, but it was amazing. So I tried to get out of, just American reality TV and go international. Mm-hmm. And it was a great experiment. I follow them all on Instagram now.
I also asked before we started recording, because she was telling me a little bit about her international experience. I asked if she watched any non-reality TV.
God, yes, and I haven't stopped thinking about that. It's like, do I watch any? And then I explained to her why I don't believe in this non-reality TV. Because with reality TV, there's a beginning and there's an end. And I was using... I started off watching TV. It's all Spanish TV. So Spanish soap operas or whatever, they have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that's it. You get a new one. With like English soap operas and shows, it's never ending. How is it going to end? Who's he with? You never know because it's forever. Or they just get cut off and you never know again. I can't take it. I need to know.
But things are a little bit more finite because they're working with actual humans who have actual lives. I mean, as opposed to actors who this is their life, is to just, most TV shows can drag on and you really have no idea when you're going to get to the end. And sometimes to the detriment of those shows, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, in a future episode, this idea of, they come out of the gate with an idea, but then have to keep going. and sometimes they don't know how to keep going.
Well, yeah. So I've dropped off on all shows. I used to watch Grey's Anatomy. I don't anymore.
Right. It's good, 13 seasons. Yeah. 27 seasons.
I'm done with that. I don't watch This Is Us. I don't do sad. I don't do the other sad one, Million Little Pieces or something. I don't do any of those. I don't do scripted shows unless it's like Riverdale.
Which is basically, yes, if you're going to do anything outside of reality TV, Riverdale is
we watched Sabrina.
Yeah. We did watch Sabrina.
And then, I did watch Haunting on Hill House or whatever, the one on Netflix. Mm-hmm. And it was a bad idea because I live by myself now. So every time I heard a rustle, I was like, it's a lady with the bent neck lady. And I would wake up. I didn't sleep for a week.
So you pepper in some scripted TV.
Yeah. Randomly. Randomly I will if it's on Netflix and it's something that's whoa. Like I told you, Dirty John. I did Dirty John. And that one was good. Oh, and I did You. Okay. And I did You before everyone jumped on the bandwagon on Netflix. I watched it week after week on Lifetime.
Look at that. You're a You hipster.
I am. I'm just like Jill without the murder.
So do you have a list of favorite TV shows of all time? What if somebody asked, hey, what's your favorite TV show? What would you say?
Of all time? That's a difficult question. That's also difficult with books too. My other favorite love, I wouldn't know how to just do 10. It would have to be on my moods. If you asked me right now, I would definitely say Love After Lockup, 90 Day Fiance, Below Deck is amazing. It's on Bravo. Do you know what it is? Okay. Just making sure.
I don't. What is Below Deck?
Below Deck, it's on Bravo, and they follow a bunch of people who work on yachts, and just like outside of the boat and inside the boat, and it's super drama.
The only reason I know what it is because I live in Fort Lauderdale, and a lot of the yachties are based out of here.
A lot of them are here.
It's there's actual like yachty sightings in Fort Lauderdale where
a lot of
the
them.
chef, like I have a coworker who's obsessed with the chef on the show, and will be like, he shops at this Publix. So this is like my only context to this reality TV show.
So yeah, I think most of my top shows right now would be they would be on Bravo. I just finished Schitt's Creek. That's not reality TV. There we go. I just watched all 4 seasons.
I
like how proud you are to have named a non-reality.
I was like, yes,
I've got one.
Schitt's Creek. It's actually Canadian.
You mentioned not having a line, and I don't know. There's a really good episode of Decoder Ring called The Basement Affair. There was a period in which like one of the companies that produced a bunch of the reality shows for like VH1, they had like a bunch of the shows got canceled or whatever because somebody that they didn't really vet properly wound up murdering someone. And,
we actually just talked about that this week because I remember that time. We were talking about the dark period of reality TV. Because I had a friend, my roommate is not into, but I make her watch it with me because there's one TV. So, but we had a house guest and she loves reality TV, and we were talking about it, and she didn't know about the dark time of reality TV.
The dark time.
This is the dark time. This is VH1 stopped doing reality TV for a while after that too, because it was. When, I don't know if you guys remember Flavor Flav, Chance at Love, and New York, whatever, Bret Michaels.
It was like there were spinoffs that begot spinoffs that in the chain of this. It was a spinoff of a spinoff. One person who they gave their own show to, and then from that person's show, one person got their own show, and so on and so forth.
Yes. So then one of the girls from Bret Michaels' Rock of Love got her own show, and she was kind of the villain on the show. She was like kind of bitchy, but like I liked her. She was funny. She ended up getting her own show. They're airing this show, and I forgot how many weeks were in. This was a long time ago. It comes out in the news. One of the contestants on the show, they didn't vet him well. He murdered his girlfriend, drove across like country lines because I think it was in Canada, or he went to Canada, and buried the girl, and they found her while the show's airing.
Oh my god.
And that's like a huge like you're putting everyone in danger at that point. They pulled the show mid-air. She never found love.
I don't know where she is, but I'm 100% sure she never found love.
And
this company had other shows in production at the same time too, though. So that's actually part of what this Decoder Ring episode, like I highly recommend if you're listening to this episode and you're like, this story sounds ridiculous and like bonkers to you and you want to hear more, like 100% cannot recommend enough. They interviewed some people who like they were talking a lot to a couple people who were on a show that was in production at the time that all of this was happening. So cause like that show like had pretty much wrapped production by the time that like it was found out. And so, but there was another show that like they were already in production. They're like, well, I guess we're going to finish it. I don't know. Even though we have previously had contestants who were murderers. It's like, maybe we don't really know what we're doing. And so that's, I don't know. It was just super, super interesting listening to these two women talk about like the roles they were playing. One of the women that they interviewed, she went on to the show thinking like, as an act of performance, like I'm going to perform the thing that they want me to be. And it was really, really interesting hearing her talk about how untenable that became with the all the time-ness of, you know, having the cameras around you and whatnot. And I don't know. It's super interesting. Even if you don't like reality TV, this is a super good episode of a podcast.
I don't remember what show it was, but I remember it came out after this girl's show was canceled, that the other person, which was another spinoff of something, her show got canceled, and she was really upset about it. And I get it, because this is also a paycheck. People are getting paid.
Right.
You're trying to make, and a lot of people try to use reality TV I don't know if it actually works. I don't know anyone who's really actually gone to be from reality to an actor. Oh, I guess that it's Steven from Laguna Beach. He was on One Tree Hill, which I used to watch.
Yeah, a couple of the Laguna Beach kids were like extras on some. They had like 1 or 2 episodes on some other shows.
Yeah.
For a lot of them, though, it's just like being a reality TV star. Like
you still make money,
right? There is money to be made from doing that. So again, like the challenge being my only sort of frame of reference. But as far as I can tell, for these people on the challenge, first of all,
but
like
they literally
in addition to the
live
prize
off
money
that
that
money
they're
from the challenge. Like that is like Johnny Bananas. That is his job,
right? That's the thing. So in addition to like the fact that they're competing for prize money, they also get paid like some money like per episode that they're on. They get paid to be on the show in the first place, and then when they're not on the show, they're like trainers and club promoters. Is basically like they get paid to go to clubs and like be at clubs, and so then the club can say like, "Oh my God, Johnny Bananas is here tonight, so like come." I don't know. I like that. I don't understand this as a business model because as somebody who's been watching this show for 20 fucking years, I don't want to go to a club where Johnny Bananas is. That doesn't actually sound appealing to me, like, in any way. But like that's the thing though, right? Like they have just enough of a name that like, you know, they can trade on that and that is their job basically the rest of the time too, is like making appearances or especially again for the challenge, which is a physical competition show. A lot of them are like trainers at gyms wherever they live. So there is like a full-time career out of being a reality TV person.
And I do remember back when CT, I don't know if it was like when the challenges first started, but after the Real World that he did it, which I think was Paris, they used to make them do college tours. And I remember being an undergrad and CT came on campus. And this was when Real World was like big. And people were going nuts to like go and see who he was. And I wasn't that into it back then. So I was like, nah, no. And I lost my chance.
Look at you now.
If it came to my college, that like I don't want to go to a club where they are. That just seems like weird and stressful. But if they came to like my college, that for sure is a thing that I would have been down. I would have wanted to go see CT at my college.
But I don't understand if they were being like motivational speakers because I don't think I would take
That cannot be.
I don't know what they were doing, but I know they were there.
This has accidentally become a reality TV conversation. We meant to talk about media sort of in general.
I feel like I was bamboozled.
I know. I'm so excited. I was literally just sitting here and I was like, this is the longest Maddie has let me talk about reality TV ever.
And we're switching the conversation. It's over.
At least I got to talk about Love After Lockup. I don't know how many times
you're doing it
again. I always bring it up. I'm like, Mari and Tino, whoever, can you please just watch this? The answer is always no.
The answer, even though we've let her now talk about this for this long, is still no. I'm cutting you off there. That's it. So we're going to, we will transition to books, I think now. But I have to say that I've had Jess, and we've invited her to speak on panels at the last 2 BookNet Fests. And every time, I haven't been able to see your panels. Obviously, I've been doing other things. But all I get
super busy
is feedback like Jess said something about dolphin sex, like this is or Jess said something about a guy wearing a horsetail. Like it's like all of these you really bring the shock and awe to these panels. So tell us a little bit about what you primarily read.
So primarily it's my first love, romance. And I read all kinds of romance. So what usually comes up in these panels is they're usually about erotica or like sex and romance or sex and fiction. And so I give what the people want. People want the shock. I give the people what they want, which is the shock and the crazy stuff in like sex and romance. But romance is more than that. That's just what is the best thing to talk about because it's so funny. I think the dolphin sex one, and you missed one that you probably didn't want to talk about, but I also talked about the Ice Planet Barbarians.
So there's a little offshoot of the book club, which is 4 of us girls, and we just pick books and we read them amongst each other. And the last one that Jess picked for us to read is called Ice Planet Barbarians.
And I'd like to point out that I picked this probably July of last year, and I have not been allowed to pick a book since.
Yeah, it's Ruby Dixon is the author.
Ruby Dixon.
It's alien sex, basically.
Basically.
But yeah, so
I would also ban you from picking books.
Okay, it's alien sex. And
the rest of the book club was well within their rights.
She makes it seem like we're bad friends, but the first 10 pages of this book are not only
aggressive.
alien sex, it's alien rape is like the introduction of the book.
Jess.
I know. The thing is, and so I was trying to explain to them, I join a lot of book clubs online because I just find there's just too many books out there, especially in romance. Like, word of mouth is the best way that I find books because Goodreads is too much. So I join a lot of Facebook book clubs and they always have suggestions, and that series is literally suggested in almost all of my book clubs. Like, I'm gonna say maybe 1 or 2 haven't mentioned it, and I'm in a lot and they all talk about it. No one has mentioned alien rape. And I was like, how is this not a topic? Because it opened up with it. I was not expecting it at all. All I heard was that it was amazing, it was so good, and I got alien rape and a penis with things that prong on, and I was like, this was never mentioned.
To be fair, Jess didn't know that this was in the book.
Let me just warn you, I didn't know. I thought this was a normal, just alien blue planet book.
She thought it was a normal alien sex book.
Like just normal girl meets Ice Planet Barbarian. They discover this new planet. That is not what I got. Not what I got at all. But I was still into it and I finished it, and Maddie dragged her feet until she had to meet her book count for the end of the year.
Literally. So you talked about how reality TV for you was kind of like a de-stressor thing that really got you into it. So what is it about romance that appeals to you?
I've always just loved romance. I think since I was little, my mom used to go to the library. She was the first person who took me to the library. And I was probably in kindergarten or first grade. And I would pick whatever was pretty that I thought was really nice. And then once I was 10, she was taking 9 or 10 for sure. I was always reading. I learned English in school. And once I learned English, I was just off and running. And so she would never filter my reading because from where she came from, she never had the opportunity. So she wanted me to read, she wanted me to learn. She just wanted to give it. She didn't look through anything. Maybe she should have. So she would go to the library for her classes. She would take English classes and she would let me roam, which I think back and I'm like, she just let me roam this library without an adult, but whatever. So I would just roam the library, me and my sister, and I would just pick up all the historical romance books and pick them up, hide them between the Babysitters Club, Sweet Valley High, which I probably should have also not been reading, and just take them out. So I've always loved it. I like the happy ending. I like the beginning, the end, done. They run off into the distance.
Yeah. No open endings.
Open endings. No, did that happen? I know what I'm getting. And it's just so satisfying to me that... And it's not that it's a neat package because it's a lot of things that happen from the beginning to the end, but it's just so satisfying.
That point about the ending is really interesting because I don't read a lot of romance, but it does remind me of the whole conversation that we had on the spoilers episode of this podcast about the appeal of looking at spoilers for certain kinds of media, just being able to know where things are going to make the experience less overwhelming or less stressful. And baked into the concept of romance is this has a happy ending. So there's something a little bit of the same thing going on there.
I'm glad you said that because there's been a new, I don't know who these people are on Twitter, but I'm going to tell them they need to stop. And they're trying to demand a less happy ending in romance. And that's not what romance is. Go to fiction. Get out of here.
Get out of my section.
Get out of my lawn.
As a point, you get out of you mentioned spoilers in our past conversation, and this is Jess and I actually went to brunch before we started recording this, which is why this is probably very annoying, but we keep referencing things that we pre-talked about. But she mentioned something very casually about going to the back of the book and reading what was there and then finishing the rest.
Actually, I was thinking about that as you said about the stress, because I cannot handle the stress of not knowing. Sometimes I challenge myself, and I guess it's odd. It's like a mental Olympics I put myself through, and I make myself not go on Goodreads and look up all the 1-star reviews and filter to the spoilers, because I do that all the time. I don't go to the back. I just read through, and then I get upset because I'm like, what the hell is this ending? So I recently read with the rest of the group, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And at first, it seemed like just a normal kind of like, not really a romance, but just like a fiction book. And it was just like, she's just going through her life. And then someone in the group chat dropped a bomb, and they kind of made a suggestion that there was more. And I was like, holy shit, I can't hold it. So I just casually went all the way to the end, skipped back a couple of pages, and I was like, oh, this is what they meant. Went back to where I was reading. And then I was like, I know what you're talking about.
Pro spoilers 3 for 3 in this conversation.
3 for 3. I also did that with Colleen Hoover's new book, which is supposed to be a romance thriller, and it is. It's really fucked up. It's a really good book, though. I hadn't read her in years, and I couldn't take the stress. I couldn't. I was like sweating, and I was like, I'm just skipping. So I skipped to the end too, because it was before it came out. So if I ever get an arc, I kind of get upset, because how am I gonna get these freaking spoilers?
You gotta read it for yourself.
I don't have enough time to just go through this. So then I personally feel that once you have the spoiler, then your reading experience is better, because you're slower, you're not anticipating it, and you're picking up the clues to that ending. So you have a better, well-rounded reading experience. In my argument for spoilers.
That is like definitely the experience that I have of it. I don't know. I don't think better is entirely fair. Like, I think for people who hate spoilers, that anticipation is the point, right? Like that is what they want, and that is why they get upset when they get spoiled, because like then they're being robbed of that experience of anticipation and like questioning. And I don't know. I don't have that experience personally, so can't relate. But like, that's to each their own.
This is also a conversation of 3 people with anxiety talking about consuming media. So it is what it is.
It is what it is. I did see someone make a comment about spoilers yesterday in one of my groups, that they consider blurbs spoilers. But then how do you know what you're like, if you want to read that book, how do you know what it is?
Right. You at some point they have to be able to advertise their book.
How would we know what Ice Planet Barbarians was about?
Yes. Well, actually, it says Ice Planet Barbarians on it. That's like the name of the series.
Right. Bad example.
Which is great. But I do, back to the topic of the BookNet panels, I do especially love going on those panels and talking about it, because I like looking at everyone's face. The shock on some of their faces. I think this, someone asked a question, what's the worst erotic scene you have read like last year? And at that point, I had been reading this book. It's my favorite author, one of them, and Maddie's actually reading her now and not liking it, and I'm really enjoying it. But she had an erotica book, and the protagonist was really into horses, so that translated into horseplay in the bedroom, if you want me to leave it open-ended. And everyone's face, the only one who wasn't surprised were the three who came with me, which was Carol, my sister, and Tina, because I had told them about this book, but everyone else was like, what the hell does this girl read?
I think the most like telling thing that you've said during this whole interview conversation is, I don't have a line.
Right at the beginning, you established where this conversation was going.
There is no line here. But I was just, and you would think it would be one of my best, but I just didn't think it was just too much. I guess that was my line.
Horseplay.
And I think it was just, this author's very descriptive. So this is basically an anal plug that's a tail. And that was being used, and just talked about the like luxurious mane coming out. And I was just like, no. But you know what? It's probably the best, most interesting read I've done. Mm-hmm. I still remember it, and it's been like a year.
Yeah. No, you're not. You're going to remember that for the rest of your life.
But that's another thing that I like about romance. It's just, it has something for everyone, even horseplay.
So we've talked a lot about things that you have loved in the realms of mostly reality TV and romance novels. What would you say is there anything that stands out to you from the last like year? Like, what's the last thing that you watched or read that you really hated?
The book I hated, I still remember, and I was just, because she just had another book come out in that series, and I told Maddie how I actually wanted to read it to see if there was even more abuse, but I hated Holly Black's
Cruel Prince.
The Cruel Prince. I hated it. Didn't understand anyone's intentions. Didn't like the abuse that was given to everyone. I hated it. So I do venture out of romance. I do like YA and like fantasy and stuff. But that one was awful. Something I've hated that I watched. Man, I have no line, guys.
So with talking to Jess, sometimes I will not understand if she likes something or hates it by the way she's talking about it.
Yeah. Like,
she'll just be like laughing and like, yeah, he had a tail. And I don't know until the end when she's like, yeah, I didn't like it. There's like a sense of humor and a sense of like enjoying everything, whether bad or good, that makes it really tough. I mean, I just feel like I
didn't even enjoy watching the bad parts. Like, I know Dirty John had super bad acting. It's supposed to be in Newport Beach in California, so the girls, for some reason, had a super, like, Valley Girl accent, and they were all dumb, and I thought everything they did was dumb, but the story was intriguing, but I thought they were dumb people.
But she still watched it.
But I still watched it. That's the thing. I still watched it. I still finished Cruel, whatever it was. Was it Prince? I don't remember.
Cruel Prince, yeah.
I finished it, but I hated every second of it. I started off the year half liking a book, and I pushed through, and then you kept texting me, give it up. Give it up. And I didn't. And I still gave it 3 stars because I enjoyed the premise, but I hate it. I did not. It took me weeks to finish that book, and I read pretty fast.
So it's more that like you've gotten to a point where you're better at just recognizing what stuff isn't for you, and you don't venture into it in the first place.
Yeah. Unless someone makes me. Like, now I'm watching, but it's not ABC. My roommate's making me watch The Assassination of Gianni Versace. And I guess because it's murder and mayhem, like, I'm into it. And it's really good. No, I think the only thing I adamantly did not like was Holly Black.
To be fair, I also DNF'd that book. So.
Yeah. And so, speaking of spoilers, I was still like wanting to know if the abuse continued. So I legit added myself to a private chat for people who have finished that book where they discuss it so I could read just the spoilers. And I was like, oh, okay, I still don't want to read this.
So kind of looking at it in a wider perspective, are there any tropes that you super hate to see, or things like, since you're very good at kind of discerning things that you'll like versus what you won't like, what's a trope that you see and you're like, nope, not for me?
I I actually, if we're talking about it in just romance, because on TV I think it does well because I'm into the sugar baby concept on TV shows, but in books I'm not into the super older guy, young girl, just because I feel like sometimes there's certain lines that I crossed that are inappropriate, but on Game of Thrones I'm about it.
Wait, what are your ships on Game of Thrones?
Daenerys and Jon Snow, incest. I don't care.
What are your examples of older man, younger woman on Game of Thrones that you're into?
I actually didn't hate Littlefinger and Sansa, and I didn't hate Tyrion and Sansa. But super inappropriate at the end, so I was like, nah, man. I'm happy with this ending. Even Sansa's like my favorite character.
Why are you doing this to her then?
I don't know. I guess I just enjoy it.
Happy.
I enjoy her character development because she started off as a shit, and now she's ending like as she's coming into like a badass. So I don't really enjoy that one in books, but when I read Game of Thrones and they were marrying her off to Tyrion, I did not enjoy it at all. But on the show, I was like, it's pretty cool.
Book Tyrion is way worse of a character than like
that's true.
I mean, not as a character. Like as a character, he's an interesting character, but like as a person, I guess, Book Tyrion is worse than show Tyrion.
And show Tyrion has the benefit of Peter Dinklage, like just being a charming like performance or whatnot. So, I mean, I'm not condoning this in any way. But fine.
And then my other, Hate to Love is one of those that I just like has to be done really, really well, because if you're a bad person or if you're super annoying, I can't get behind you getting a happy ending. Like you could have just not done it at all and I would have been fine. My favorite one, and I say this all the time and it might be weird and it could be because I was raised with Spanish novellas, but I love secret baby books. And if you look at my Goodreads, I checked before coming. I was like, what did I read last year? So I went through my year and I have shelves on my Goodreads, and I put I made it private on my Goodreads because I didn't want my coworkers judging me or other people judging me. So I also gave code names to my shelves. So one of my shelves is OPP, and 60% of my books came from OPP, and that stands for other people's pregnancies.
Oh my god.
Wait. So
I am still not entirely sure I understand what we're talking about.
Secret babies it's gone back years. It's where a lady has a pregnancy and circumstances arise where she cannot tell her partner that she's having his baby. So they separate for years, or she tries to tell her partner, and the evil girl that really wants him takes the note, tells her to go away, somehow diverts her. So she disappears for years, and then something happens where they cross paths again. Her dad dies, her neighbor realizes she has a kid, someone sees her, and she has to come back and confront her partner, whoever the baby daddy is, and let him know, you've got a child. Surprise! There was a secret baby that was had. I love it. I love the drama. I love the secret.
You get a baby for free.
And there was actually one who was made into a movie last year. And I made all of my friends watch it. Were not happy with me. It was so bad. Oh, it was amazing. But it was one of the first secret baby books I read.
What is
it was called? It came out in theaters.
Oh, okay.
Man, I have to look it up. But it was last year, and you can rent it on iTunes for $1.99.
We'll put it in the show notes in case anybody wants to rent it for $1.99.
In case you two are a big fan of these secret baby tropes. Boy, has Jess got a movie for you.
I've got a movie for you. But that's my absolute favorite. And I feel like everyone should give it a try. It's drama. It has everything. Romance, suspense.
Thriller, maybe. I don't know.
You never know. She's running from him.
On that note, I guess we're going to end this episode of the podcast. Thank you so much to Jess for joining us for this little experiment, this interview conversation, whatever you want to call it. If you are enjoying this podcast, we would love it if you joined our community on Patreon, where we've got some bonus content and polls to vote on future podcast media. You can find out more at patreon.com/SnarkSquad. We would love to hear all of your thoughts on this episode and reality TV and secret baby plots. You can find a post dedicated to this episode along with show notes. We'll put the name of that movie Jess was talking about at snarksquad.com, or you can find us on Twitter at snark_squad. I am at Sweeney Says.
You can find me at My Name is Marines.
You can find me at Jess with an S.
Thank you as always to Steph and Chin for the delightful theme music that is playing us out right now, and we will be back in your podcast feed again next week. Bye.
Bye.